Welcome to the Injury Law Pod, the podcast that explores and demystifies the complex world of personal injury law. Each week, Missouri personal injury attorney Eric Bartlett dives into the legal issues surrounding personal injury cases to help you understand your rights and options when seeking justice and compensation for personal injuries. So sit back, relax, and let's explore the world of personal injury law together.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Injury Law Pod. I am your host, Eric Bartlett, 28-year personal injury lawyer, and this is the podcast where we discuss everything related to personal injury law. And there's a lot to personal injury law, and I know every day we see things, billboards, advertisements. Obviously, people know that they can make a claim for a car accident or maybe a fall. There's dog bite incidents, and there's even unsafe activities, maybe at a place where kids go to be entertained and something's defective there, like a trampoline park or a bounce place or something like that. There are a lot of areas of this particular law that affect people every day, because we're out in the world and we are exposed to many different opportunities, if you will, to be hurt. And again, unfortunately, due to the negligence of someone else. So that is what this podcast is all about. Just discovering and talking about everything that's involved so that if you find yourself in a situation with a serious injury claim, you have a resource to learn more and to get answers. And on today's episode, we're going to talk about two things that I've discussed in the past. But in recent weeks, both of these things have come to be important in a couple cases that I have. And it just reiterates how often these things show up as really important or valuable tools if you're in the situation of making a claim. So I wanted to hit those again, a little more detail and with real life examples. So in the past, I did the car accident series. I can't remember now if that was a 7-part series, but we talked about all the various parts, steps, whatever you want to view it as, to a car accident claim. And in that series, one of the things that I talked about was dash cameras, in-vehicle cameras. And recently, we just signed up a client where a dash cam and that video is an important piece of evidence in making the claim this person has for the injuries she sustained in the accident. So in preparation for today's episode, I quickly Googled dash cams, and there are a lot of dash cam options out there for purchase. Now, there is also another option, which is some insurance companies will reward you if you have a dash cam. And, if you exercise safe driving habits, obviously they're wanting to encourage safe driving. And so they also want to encourage retention of evidence if something happens. I'm not necessarily a fan of giving insurance companies access to my driving. And I'm not saying that I'm a bad driver, but at the same time, these insurance companies offer discounts if you will put a monitor in your vehicle that tracks your speed, your braking habits, things like that. Again, what I just mentioned is dash cams. Some insurance companies will give you an incentive for that, but I don't trust insurance companies. And so the discount that's offered isn't worth it to me to have them monitoring, tracking, and they being the decision makers on whether or not they believe I'm a safe driver. So again, it's just my opinion. I'm not a big fan of that. And I'm certainly not encouraging that. That's a personal decision you would have to make. And if it's worth it to you to get that extra discount, then there it is. You can certainly take them up on that offer. But if you go out and you purchase your own dash cam and you have it in the car and you have it there to record everything that's going on in front of you, then I say, yes, great idea. Because so many times I've seen it where it's absolutely the other driver's fault. But if there's no witnesses and it's your word against the other driver's word, there's no claim that can be made. You know, the police, they can't magically make anything happen. If they're called to the scene afterwards and there's two different stories about what happened, they're not going to find fault on anybody. Sometimes they can look, see how lights were functioning, things like that. If somebody's claiming a malfunction of a traffic signal, they will, as part of their investigation, watch the cycling of the lights and record that there's nothing wrong with the light functioning as they see it. But generally speaking, the police only can go off of whatever evidence is there. And if the evidence isn't there, and like I say, it's a word against word situation, and you're seriously hurt, and you know it's that other driver's fault, well, you're not going to go anywhere. You have the burden to produce evidence to make your claim against the other driver. And so it's just that easy that if somebody decides to lie and say, oh, no, I had the green light, when you know, in fact, you had the green light, you had the right of way, there's nothing more that can be done. And unfortunately, I get calls from people in that exact situation where if they had something to document the other driver's fault, then there it is, claims ready to be made. And so, you know, you hope, right, that there's going to be a witness to the incident and somebody to back up your story. And, you know, it's never great if it happens to be your sister that was riding in the passenger seat who may be hurt as well. And you two both have the same story, but the other driver has a different story. Again, it's not going to get as much weight as an independent witness, somebody that doesn't know anybody involved in the accident, and they witnessed it. They saw who had the green light, who had the red light, whatever it is. But a lot of times there's no witnesses, and there might be people around and they don't stop. An accident happens and they keep on driving and no one's ever identified. So what do you do in that instance? Well, that's where the dash camera comes into play, because the dash camera is always going to be with you. You need to make sure it's always on. And this was in my steps to do before an accident ever happens, because this is one of those things where proactively you can set yourself up in case something happens. And I've talked about it before. When we're in cars, when we're on the roads, the statistics are against us that we're going to be involved in an accident. And at the end of all of it, there's just simply no way. If you occupy motor vehicles over the course of a lifetime, you're probably not going to be in just one accident, but probably multiples. And again, you cross your fingers, you hope that nothing serious comes of it, but you just don't know. And so the dash camera comes in, always on, always recording. And in that moment, if something happens, you've got it. And now you have independent evidence of how this accident occurred, the fact that it wasn't your fault, and you can make your claim. It's a game changer without question. So recently, we had a client who was proceeding through an intersection with a green light, and lo and behold, another driver turned in front of her and caused a collision. And there was a question about who had the right of way. And so this was really cool, even a different scenario. And I'm going to now, if you're watching this, then you're going to be able to see, I'm going to pull up the diagram the police did. If you're listening, I'll break it down for you. But basically, I'm going to share the screen here. I pulled up the diagram here that the police who investigated this accident created based on what they observed, what they were told. And you'll see here vehicle 1, which is my client, was coming straight through this intersection, and vehicle 2 turned in front of her vehicle. So vehicle 2 is the vehicle that my client is making a claim against. And so of interest is vehicle 2's driver told the police that she was turning left with a green light. So there was this question, right? Okay, who had a green light? What kind of green light? Did vehicle 2 have the right of way, or did vehicle 1 have the right of way? Well, the cool part of this particular accident was that there was a witness sitting in a nearby parking lot with a dash camera running on his vehicle. And so you'll see here in the third paragraph of the narrative of what happened, witness 1, that's W1, advised he had dash cam video of the incident from his vehicle that was pulled over in a nearby parking lot. He showed me, the police officer, the video, and I observed vehicle 1, that's my client, southbound on Pryor Road with a green traffic signal. I then observed vehicle 1 crash into vehicle 2 as vehicle 2 made a left turn in front of her. And he was able to see the lights. He was able to see that my client, who is traveling straight through the intersection with a green light, absolutely has the right of way. If you're turning in front of oncoming traffic, unless you have a green arrow, you have the obligation to yield. But that other driver would not have a green arrow because my client had a green light. So there's no way, unless there was a malfunctioning light, that the vehicle number 2 had any reason to be making that turn when my client was coming through the intersection. And so this dash cam video, now again, this is crazy, right? Because it wasn't in my client's car, but it was from an independent witness who, thank goodness, alerted the police that he had it. This video makes the claim because now the other driver cannot argue that she had any type of right of way in this accident. Okay, so this is the kind of stuff I see every day because I get constantly called by people that are in a situation where an accident happens. And unfortunately, again, you don't have this kind of evidence. And if this evidence wasn't out there and that other driver was saying she had a green light, it would be a dog fall. We wouldn't be able to make the claim because it would be one driver's version against the other driver's version. And if there wasn't a witness, again, you got to take out those two factors, and those happen all the time. So I cannot emphasize enough, dash cam video, dash cam in your car to get the video is critical. And if you're seeing this before you've ever been in an accident, then run, don't walk to get that dash cam and put it in your car. And if you have been in an accident and you have dash cam video, make sure you hold on to it because it could become very important. I mean, it's also important too, right, to show the severity of a collision and things like that. I like right now we have a case where there is a dash cam. This is interesting, in the at-fault driver's truck. It was a commercial vehicle, so they had a dash cam, and it shows my client hitting his big truck as the truck driver was attempting to turn left in front of my client. And, he again tried to give a wishy-washy story to some degree about what happened. But at the end of the day, his dash cam video sealed the deal and showed that he turned in front of my client's vehicle and also showed the impact and things like that. So there it is, dash cam videos or dash cams, you must have them. So now what's the other thing that we need to know about? And that is black box data. Again, in the series I did on car accidents, I talked about black box data. And so what am I talking about? So officially, they're called electronic control module devices. And all modern cars have them. And they record. They're constantly recording and overwriting themselves. But if an accident happens, they lock in, they save the 5 seconds before the collision. They save data that they're collecting. And they collect a lot of data. But the biggest ones that we find useful are generally they record the speed of the vehicle and they record the braking of the vehicle. And again, they record many other things, seatbelt usage, the movements of the vehicle, those types of things. But speed and braking are big because speed, of course, can show you whether the person was driving too fast for wherever the roadway was that they were on. And the braking can show that they were or were not paying attention. Because if they never braked, clearly they either didn't have time or they weren't paying attention, something of that nature. And again, you can put the speed and the braking together. And if they're going so fast that they didn't have time to react to the other driver that was innocent, then you can put all that together to make the claim against that driver. So again, just to be clear, the black box data exists on, it exists on all the vehicles, but as an injured person trying to make an injury claim against another driver, you're wanting to get the black box data from the other driver's vehicle. Now, there's always a chance, right, that the other driver's insurance wants to get your black box data. And that's a very real possibility as well. But if you know that something's not right, something's up, you think that other car was going way too fast, or you think the other car wasn't paying attention, you've got to act immediately to try and get access to the black box data. And the way you do that is you put the other driver on notice and you put their insurance company on notice that before that car gets destroyed, if it's totaled or repaired and driven again, because once it starts getting driven again, that'll get overwritten. Whatever it is, you want to download the black box data. And yes, it does require special equipment and people that know what they're doing to get that data off of the data recorder at the vehicle. And so we utilize black box data quite a bit when we represent injured people. And I have a specific example here within the last month of a client I signed up because of what witnesses said about now we know the at-fault driver. So of interest, I'm going to share the screen again. Okay, so on this particular accident, the police officer wrote in here that, actually, let me back up just to give you an overview of what happened And then we'll break it down from what the police officer said, which is this. My client was pulling from a stop sign that was located just past a controlled intersection. With a controlled intersection meaning there were traffic lights. So she's at the next street up where there's a stop sign. So she had an obligation to stop, yield for traffic, obviously pull out when safe to do so. Meanwhile, there's this intersection, traffic controlled intersection, just down the street. And we're talking just down the street from where she was. So my client pulls out after looking both ways, seeing nothing coming. And as she's making her way through the intersection, she gets collided with by a vehicle, and it hits her driver's side. So it's coming from her left. And that's where that intersection, that light controlled intersection is. So on its face, you're thinking, okay, there's a problem here because she had a stop sign. She gets hit by a car traveling on the main road that doesn't have a stop sign at that intersection. And so what's going on here? Well, so the police in their investigation, they noted, and you'll see in the second paragraph here, the police officer wrote, "It should be noted that multiple witnesses approached me during the investigation, all stating that they observed driver one," that's the person that we thought might be at fault here, not my client, "to be traveling at high speeds and running a red light at the intersection of 169 and 68th Street. So the intersection, the light controlled intersection that's right before where my lady pulled out, this guy, according to multiple witnesses, is speeding and trying to get through the red light. Well, and if that's the case, my lady who made the judgment when she decided to pull out from the stop sign, she didn't see anybody coming. It was clear. And here's somebody that appears to be speeding, driving recklessly, and he collides with her vehicle. So when she hires me, my first priority is get to that driver's black box data. Let's find out how fast this driver was going. And lo and behold, we pulled the black box data off of his vehicle, and this was a 35 mile per hour zone. And at one point, at the peak of his speed, he was going 78 miles per hour as he was coming through that intersection, trying to make it through the red light. And when he collided with her, he was traveling 69 miles per hour in a 35 mile per hour zone. You talk about a hard hit. And clearly, if you're my client who's at that stop sign making a judgment based on 35 mile per hour speeds, and you decide to pull out and you don't see anybody nearby, well, you cannot anticipate somebody traveling over twice the speed limit because they're going to be on you so much quicker than you would ever expect. And so when she pulls out, she doesn't see anything remotely close to her. And as she's making her way through her intersection, bam, here this car is and collides with her. So in this instance, because even though we had multiple witnesses saying this, they weren't identified. So that's going to be a problem because we got to have real people to testify if we have to push this through court. And right now, we don't have that. We just have the police officer's report, which is hearsay. And so it wouldn't be, we couldn't call the police officer in to say, hey, what did people tell you? We would have to have those witnesses. But because witnesses had told the police officer, then we were able to go get the black box data, find out exactly what was going on. And now we've got a claim to make for this very seriously hurt lady. So that's how black box data is a game changer. And I've had multiples of these over the years where it looks like it could be my client's fault. Somebody decides to turn left, when they're supposed to be yielding. And as they're making their way through, bam, here comes a car. Where in the world did it come from? Well, it's because that car was driving in excessive amounts of speed for the area. And again, that's a game changer. Just like if you prove that they're on a cell phone at the time, messing with their phone, distracted, whatever, that's a game changer. Because again, you've got to prove, if you're the injured person and you want to make a claim against a driver you believe is at fault, you have the burden to prove it. And you got to find the evidence, because it's not always just a clear, rear end accident, right? Rear end accident on the spectrum of accidents is 100% the fault of the person behind you, because you're supposed to drive with enough distance to react to people in front of you and what they're doing. And when somebody rear ends somebody else, it's going to be 99.9% of the time the fault of the person that rear-ended the other vehicle. And you're just not always going to see those scenarios. And you get people that are really seriously hurt. So you're not always going to get that scenario where it's crystal clear who's at fault. And that is where things like dash cams and black box data come into play and make a claim in something that otherwise is not evident just from the circumstances of what happened. So the big takeaway here, if you're driving around without a dash cam, get one. It just could be the key piece of evidence you need someday. And don't worry about it. If you've got a newer car, you've got a black box data, and all the other cars on the road have a black box data or a black box recorder that contain black box data. But you need to know if you're in an accident and something is off, it doesn't add up. Now you know to go after that information. And again, it does take specialized people to get that information. So generally speaking, that's where a lawyer is going to come in to help you. And really, in any of these situations, if it's a disputed liability situation, a personal injury lawyer that knows these things, has been through these things, is going to be your greatest ally in putting the claim together for you. As always, if you have questions, you have concerns, if you have a serious claim, we're always here. We're happy to help. You can reach out for a free consultation. And if you enjoyed this, found it informative, I always ask for a 5-star review wherever you found us. And until the next episode, please be well and be safe.